Welcome back to Sidewalk, Skyline podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Rogers. And today I am interviewing a friend, Scott Couper, who is in Peterborough. And when I was in Bible college in Peterborough, I used to walk downtown a lot and up and down George Street going to the college. And even back then, even though it's a smaller city, it had just a good urban vibe to it. For almost 30 years, Scott Couper pastored in various Pentecostal churches, and he enjoyed a satisfying and fruitful ministry. But in his last 10 years pastoring in Peterborough, he was in a church that was on the edge of town. And his heart began to open deeply to the obvious poverty and the struggles of Peterborough's street-affiliated community. And through a series of unplanned encounters with struggling people and the growing awareness that his season of pastoral ministry at that church was winding down, he began the transition to become a Mission Canada urban worker in Peterborough. So welcome, Scott. Good to have you on today. And
thanks, Kevin. Appreciate being here.
I know that you're at the beginning, since I'm involved in the team that's launching you. I know that you're still at the front end of raising your support and moving to full-time urban worker. But why don't you tell folks who are watching or listening today about the unfolding dream? What is it that you're doing in Peterborough, and what are you going to be doing in helping, especially in the poverty sector of your city?
Yeah, well, so the little village of Peterborough, I guess the city of Peterborough, 80 some odd thousand. I just read a report that came out of Peterborough City that 311 people are identified as homeless. That was July 2021 statistics. And I wonder how they do that and how they count that and how many they didn't count. I can't help. But everyone remarks at how many homeless are downtown and so visible right now, down by the river, down on the main street, George and Water. And
I was really struck by that when I visited you earlier this year in Peterborough. And every few years I get to drop back into Peterborough for some reason. And but yeah, it was noticeable, much more than any other time I've been in the city.
Yeah, and I think as a pastor in the city, I was noticing it more, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, and God was really tugging on my heart. And there's a group called Disciple a City, led by a young guy named Adam, and just a tremendous group of young on fire believers. And they're teaching people to go out and talk with people, just have conversations and share the gospel. And one of my parishioners, guy my age, maybe just a little bit older, was telling me he was doing it, and I was secretly a little jealous. I thought, what the heck, and I can stand and talk to hundreds of people. But to talk to a street involved person, for me was, I think, a little scary. And I said, I'm going with you next time, and so I went with him. By the time I found the time, it was after I had resigned, but he and I went, and I was finished with my commitment at Northview Church. And so we went out one night with Disciple City and had 2 or 3 encounters, met a man. It was February, and so this guy was sleeping in the alcove of a business, sleeping bags and all that. We went and bought him a coffee and then shared Jesus with him and prayed for him, and that kind of gave me a whole new perspective. Slowing down, looking a guy in the eye, buying him a coffee, seeing his gratitude just for a simple coffee, and then just getting down on my knees and kind of talking to him and hearing his heart. Couldn't believe the way he opened up about his past, about his struggles. So I started doing it on a regular basis. My buddy was working a full-time job. I suddenly had all this time. And so I'd park the truck and walk down to the local Tim Hortons. There's one where a lot of the street people hang out, and I just determined that I was going to buy somebody a coffee that day and talk with them. So I've been doing that. It's led me to all kinds of conversations. I've heard all kinds of heartbreaking stories. And out of that, I think, was born this idea that, man, I want to help these people if I can. Just take the next step in a very practical kind of humanitarian aid kind of way. There's plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of social structures and helps in Peterborough, and I'm thinking my goal really is to connect these street involved people with the helps that already exist, government, churches, volunteer stuff that's going on, and just be kind, just be generous, just show hospitality and be a good listener. And I've already found that people are confiding in me. It's funny, just yesterday I talked with a man named Brian who was on a park bench and finishing off his tall boy beer, his $2 beer. Poor guy was not in the greatest of shape, and I sat down on the bench with him, beside him, and just said, "Hey, how you doing?" "Not too good." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." And he starts telling me about it. Then he stops. He goes, Who the F are you?" And I said, "I'm just the guy that cares, man." And so he's guarded at first, and he stopped a few times to ask me who I was. And I just said, "Look, honestly, man, I'm just a guy that cares. Keep talking. Tell me. I want to know." Anyway, his big concern was housing, and housing is very difficult in Peterborough, like anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But in my phone contacts, I know a landlord who has 2 or 3 rooming houses. They're not places you and I would be delighted to stay in, but it's a warm spot. And I said to Brian, I said, "Look, man, if I make this call, would you go with me to see whether we can get you a plate?" And he's just like, "What?" "Yeah, man, I'll do that." And so I called this contact, and the supervisor was home. We went, sat in the kitchen of this rooming house, filled out an application, and the supervisor was really pleased with this man, Brian, and kind of took him right to the top of the list. And there's a real good chance that Brian's going to be in off the street and into a room by the end of the month.
Wow.
So that's the kind of thing that I want to do. I'm also establishing a relationship with Brian. I'll be in touch with him again. We'll have further conversations. And through the power of that relationship, like while we were on the bench, I prayed with him twice, once about finding a place, and the second time about the pain that was in his body. But, it just didn't feel right to, go through the whole 4 spiritual laws with him and all that right there. We just weren't ready, But my goal with Brian is to build relationships, stay in touch with him, see things improve for him, and through the power of that relationship, the kindness that I'm going to naturally have the ability to share the full gospel with him and see him enter the kingdom. So it's a double whammy. But that's what I'm after. But they meet those needs first, if I can, and then through the power of that relationship, bring them to meet Jesus.
Well, Scott, it reminds me of, I heard a story of a man whose job was tending animals, and he had 99 in the fold, and he went out to find the one lost sheep. And it's kind of a bit of a parallel to what you're doing. You left the 99 at Northview Church, and to go on the street, not with a schedule, but with an open heart, to say, "Holy Spirit, lead me. Who can I buy a coffee today?" And so this is this new kind of rhythm for you.
It's new. Yeah.
That's so different than pastoring a church, or it can be. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about Peterborough and the city and some of the needs and some of the plans. But before we do that, I just kind of want to dig in a little bit. And you're in your early 50s, I believe, and
55.
55, yeah. And
Middle, yeah.
so you've got almost 30 years of being full-time ministry, pastoring in different places. And tell me about some of the places that you served as a pastor, and how did that feed into this new sense of calling to go to the streets? Like, I don't think this just happened overnight. I think that there's a good likelihood that pieces of this were planted in you a long time ago and had just been slowly growing. Am I right?
Yeah, I've been considering this question for a bit. I think it's kind of starts back when I was a teenager. I got saved at a Bible camp as a 12-year-old, and went to a Pentecostal church for the first time in my life at 15, I guess I was, and that was a new experience for me. But the pastors there talked a lot about mission, and we'd have a world missions organization. Don Horban at Cedarview Church. I'm a Cedarview kid, I guess, really, and Newmarket, yeah. Don and Mike Horban. There was, they'd have a mission week or month every year, and missionaries from all over the world. I met Jim and Kathy Cantillon there. Actually, when I started going there, they were still the pastors, and they went to Israel. It got in my heart. I just thought, Christians are on mission. We're we're about going out, and so it started there. I think the Horbans really helped plant that in my heart as a young man. I went off to Bible college. Then, some of the guys I worked with, Charlie Swarwood, a community guy, been the pastor in Stratford for 30 some odd years before he retired. Now he's the chaplain.
Police chaplain, yeah.
The police, yeah. And the head of the Ontario Police Chaplains Association. So, I mean, this guy doesn't quit, but for him, pastoring was about community. Everybody in Stratford would be in a coffee shop. Hey, Pastor Charlie, they don't go to our church, but so, that idea of mission being outside of our, of our house and reaching to the end of the world, but then also we're on mission as a church to be in, in community. Then, I worked alongside Tom Quinn, was his associate pastor. I've been up to North Spirit Lake on Bearskin Airlines with Tom and other small indigenous communities, preaching in their little chapels and churches. And so I've been exposed to different facets of communities and peoples outside of my small group by the men that mentored me, which I'm very grateful for. I remember even as a youth pastor, trying to figure out how to motivate my first youth group in Milton, Ontario. We walked the streets with Paul Burke. We went on a weekend down to Toronto, and Paul Burke was a missionary down there. We slept on the hardwood floor of this old Anglican church right next to the Toronto Centre, and then the Eaton Centre, and then we walked the streets with Pastor Paul, and his church was the people, and he warned us, we're going to be walking in some of the seediest parts of town, and we're going to be talking to prostitutes and drug addicts and stuff, and I'm thinking as a pastor, this is going to be good for my farm kids in Milton, and then again in Stratford we did it, and good exposure for them. Well, man, I'm telling you, it was a great exposure for me, just watching Paul deal with these people with respect and kindness and the love that they had for him. And I mean, these people were used to him coming around with groups, because there's like 15 young people following him around like a puppy dog, and it's almost like a trip to the zoo. Like they we're there to observe, and I was amazed at how gracious the street involved people were with us. That they understood what he was trying to do, build awareness, and they weren't offended by, and I learned a lot watching Paul.
Yeah, Paul Burke inspired so many,
Yeah, he did.
And he really was in Toronto during those years. Really was cutting a new path. In fact, I learned a couple years ago. Shane Claiborne is a famous, well-known Christian that came alongside Tony Campolo in Philadelphia, and Shane's very active in urban ministry, and learned that he did an internship with Paul Burke.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know if Paul's listening to the podcast today, but if you are, Paul, just we all want you to know that you are a great inspiration, and we love what you did in Toronto.
Yep. I don't even know if Paul would remember me. That was like 1991, but Paul, you had impact on probably way more people than you ever realized, and part of what shaped me.
Yeah. Some of the early experiences taking kids on mission trips, encountering just people in poverty. So let's go back even farther to the start of the call of God in your life. When did you have that awakening, that sense that, I've given my life to the Lord, but now I need to give my life to serving the Lord full time? How did that take shape in you?
Yeah, I can't remember a certain event, but it certainly happened at Cedarview Church. So I got saved at a Brethren Bible camp and went to a Brethren Bible chapel and got baptized there and loved that experience. And we went to the Pentecostal church in when I was around 15. I remember it all kind of crashing on me. I think by the time I was 16, I knew the call of God was on me, and a lot of it was just observing how passionate these believers were about giving it all to reach the lost. And I don't think I told a lot of people about it. I was quite nervous about it because I'm an introvert by nature, and I didn't like the idea of having to stand in front of people and preach. I kind of thought I was going to be a missionary and go to Africa to build churches. What's hilarious is when I say build churches, I meant put up structures. I was in woodworking in grade 10, building furniture and stuff. And that's how I'll serve on the mission field. And God had other plans, but I think right around that age of 15, 16, just that sense that God wanted me to give my life to this. And so it was, and I want to go back to Jim Canelon too. There was a moment in time there. I do remember this moment vividly, where we had just got to the church, and Pastor Jim Canelon was the pastor, and his wife Kathy. So they're this young, beautiful couple in their 30s. I mean, she's this gorgeous blonde. They have 3 little blonde-haired kids, like probably all under, I don't know, 8 years old or something. Just the sweetest looking family. And I never forget them standing up and telling us that they were having to resign. And it just knocked the church over, and that they were going to get on a plane and they were going to Israel, that God had called them to Israel. Well, that was the time in the 80s of Scud missile attacks, and, people weren't visiting Israel at that time. It was a dangerous place. And here's this guy bringing his beautiful wife and children over there to live because God had called him. And I'll never forget this statement. He said, "I have determined that it is safer for me in Israel, in the center of God's will, than anywhere else being out of the will of God. And I just went, holy, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Again, a powerful, impactful thing. And I think that was one of the things for me. I want to be in the center of his will.
Well, that's so true. And it's amazing how when we respond to that direction from the Lord to go somewhere or to be with someone, that he actually takes the fear out of it. He gives you the grace that you need for what would otherwise be a discomforting situation. And I'm sure that's been part of a change in you, going from, the relative security and comfort of a local church to being the guy out on the streets by himself, mixing with people that other people are trying to avoid.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do that without a sense of empowerment, right? A sense of I'm happy to be doing this. I want to do this. Yeah, that's interesting.
True.
Yeah. So in your life, were there some other mentors or influencers that affected your sense of calling to the streets in particular?
Well, hung out with Sammy Welton for a while. He's the the president of the executive director of Possibilities International, and actually worked alongside with him for about a year and a half and got to see poverty in other countries like Guatemala and Ukraine and Kyrgyzstan, and like I've taken trips with teams from churches over there, and we don't know what poverty is. Like the squalor of some of these government-run homes for disabled children or senior citizens or mentally handicapped men, just unbelievable. It was in traveling with Sam and doing overseas and stuff that I realized that we're the oddballs in Canada. We think the whole world's like us, and everywhere else, they don't have the government programs, they don't have the supports, they don't have the wealth, the homes, the food, the stores that we do. Even the law and order, like driving in any one of those countries, just traffic in and out, and just so that helped shape and form me. I know when I was pastoring in Goderich in 2007, we took I think about 30 people over and redid an orphanage in Tokmak, Kyrgyzstan. We raised $45,000 in the community through fundraisers and dinners and things like that, car washes and everything, and poured it into this to hiring local workers for doing tiling and electrical work and all that stuff, and then working alongside with them. It was awesome to see the transformation. Honestly, I got back from that trip and just went, what are we doing in Canada? For the amount of money it took to transform that and to bring incredible change to the lives of those orphans was really powerful. So, traveling to other countries, Sam's a man of incredible generosity. Watching him bless people beyond their wildest imagination was a lot of fun. And that guy he's a ball of fun no matter where he goes. But that was impactful.
When people like Sam Welton, or many other names we could mention, Paul Burke, there's people in our life that what you see it's not just a job. It really is something that makes them alive. It's wrapped up in who they are. You get up close, and it can be overwhelming if you're not used to it. but at the same time, it has this ripple effect on our heart, right?
Yeah.
And
Overflow. Yeah.
yeah, so being around Sam stirred some things and opened up some things in you. So let's talk about Peterborough. And so what's the big plan? What are you going to do? What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, so again, I really sense that the plan is fluid. I feel the Holy Spirit's kind of said to me, like, Scott, don't be trying to nail this thing down completely. But the best idea that I have of it right now is that it's kind of a two-stage situation. The first stage is just, I'm in this fundraising stage of, I'm so grateful for Mission Canada, the supports they give. You've been a coach for me and my urban missionary coach, and I've, honestly learned things from you and Charles Hermelink's been, a fundraising coach, things that I thought, I know how to, been doing this for 30 years. I know how to do this. But honestly, those resources have been so helpful. And then to have, the umbrella of Mission Canada for folks to give and get receipted and all that's just been awesome. So I'm delighted to be with Mission Canada. Right now, I'm in that stage of just trying to get enough funding so that I can be on the street full time. Lately, I've been driving transport part time and doing odd jobs, doing brake jobs and for automotive stuff in my garage for people. But I'm still taking time out of my week. And you mentioned it, unhurried blocks of time. Like, I won't go down if I only have an hour. I need 3 hours or something. Because if I meet somebody, I don't want them seeing me looking at my watch. Well, I gotta go.
Yeah.
The beauty of walking and talking with people down there is not having anywhere else to be. I watched Jesus do that, and The Chosen's really helpful if you watch that Jesus function. But Jesus, even if he had somewhere else to be, he was present with the person. This guy's daughter is dying and they're on their way to the home. But when the woman showed up who needed Jesus' help, he stopped and helped her and made sure she was complete before he moved on to the next thing. And so I'm walking and talking with people. I'm on a weekly basis, even with part-time work and everything. I'm going down and building relationship with people, talking with them. Listening is the thing. Pastors are great at talking, but I've been learning to listen and not have anything to say. Just listen. Just show them the dignity of hearing their story, and just oh man, that is terrible, or that's a piece of good news, or whatever, but reacting to them and not being so hung up on, I got to get the gospel in here. I got to get this, I got to get my 2 cents in. The goal to build relationship, to show kindness, to treat them with respect, because so often they don't get it. That's what I'm doing right now, building a network of relationships with the people, as many people as I can on the streets. And then at the same time, I've been having meetings with Canadian mental health supervisors and ODSP workers and Brock Mission, the men's shelter, the Yes shelter, meeting the supervisors and the directors, so that if I do meet somebody that could benefit from one of those services, I got them in my contact list and I can call them and say, hey, I'm going to walk with Joe up to the front desk here if you'd meet us. Joe just needs some help in this area. So advocating for these people, helping them get to the next step if they want it. I know a lot of the people, they're not looking for help. They're fine. But even just to sit and listen to them, build relationship, come and see them again. Eventually, I haven't had anybody tell me they don't want me to pray for them. You just show them that you care.
Well, I think when you look at a safety net in a city, Primarily, you have in the safety net a mix of social work, and sometimes you have faith-based ministries that are stepping in to make a difference. And I think when a faith-based group or person like yourself steps into it, there's a great recognition that we are encountering people that have a spirit, people that have some kind of knowledge or experience of the Almighty. Whether they're converted or not, they are spiritual beings, and so we recognize that. But sometimes social work is slow to get to that page. It's everything else is first.
Right.
And that's okay. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that you see yourself being able to connect with people that you encounter. You're not going to be the social worker that provides every service, but you're going to be the guy that knows every service that you can connect them to appropriately. But more than that, also being their pastor, whether they call you that or they call you father or padre or call you something you can't repeat on air. You're stepping into a relationship with people that by and large are disconnected from, say, the life of the church. I'm sure you saw it as a pastor, we do pretty good at kind of keeping the local church as a place of refuge and safety. And when we get somebody that has exceptional challenges in their life, we don't always know what to do. And so in pastoring, you told me the story about the winter day when you were driving your truck somewhere, and this is the way that the Jesus heart works in people. So why don't you tell that story about what happened that day, because it's a good story and it speaks volumes to what's being shaped in you.
Well, it was three years ago, December 8th, and I had been setting up tables for our church banquet down in Peterborough, and we've just moved north of Peterborough, 5 minutes to Ennismore. And so I was driving home, and it was a cold north wind. There was some snowflakes in the air, and this guy's on the side of the road with like long scraggly hair and an old 1960s full face helmet, but the visor's missing. Like it was just a shell. I don't even know if it had the stuffing in it. It was just this. And then he had this old black leather jacket, and he's kicking this e-bike kind of uphill. It's obviously disabled. It's dead. And I can tell you, he was wherever he was going, it was going to take him hours to get there. There was nothing between the road that I was viewing him at and the destination. The next town was Ennismore, Bridgenorth there. So I just was like, wow, man, I would not want to be that guy. And I was driving by, and I just sensed the Holy Spirit go, okay, what are you going to do about that? Is that the end of the matter? And I had to turn around, come back, stop, talk to the guy, convince him to let me help him. He was really, really suspicious about why I wanted to help him. I said, look, man, I don't want anything from you. I'm not a freak or whatever, but I said, there's this guy thousands of years ago said, he's a really smart dude, and said, if you should do to others what you would have them do unto you. And I said, I'm watching you, and I wouldn't, I'd want somebody to stop and pick me up. So anyway, we chatted all the way up. When he got in the vehicle, with me. I mean, he was it was quite an odor to him. I don't think he showered for days, and turns out he was in his mid-20s, really nice kid, and wanted to go to his storage unit. So we took the bike to the storage unit, and I said to him, "Hey, would you like to come back to my house? It's just 5 minutes back down the road. Grab a warm shower, warm up a bit." So he thought that was great. I threw him in the shower and was running around trying to find a toothbrush in a box, a new one, and some clothes out of my closet, just some jeans and everything were about the same size, and found him some leftovers in the fridge. And then while he's shoving that down, I said to him, "Hey, we got our church banquet tonight, and I said, it's going to be a really good meal. I could probably hook you up with a free ticket." I didn't tell him I was the pastor. He didn't find out till later when we got there. But oh yeah, that'd be good. So he came to the banquet. I was just so delighted at our men's group. We'd been studying a Bible study from World Vision called Compassion Canada, called Eyes to See. And it's all about poverty, and not just, money, spiritual poverty and everything. And so these guys surrounded this young man and greeted him, my guys from my men's group, and made sure he had a ride to church. He became part of our church, basically. We had a different guy picking him up. We found out he lived on the street, and he was living in the Brock Mission. It wasn't long before he was fearful that he was going to get really beat up there and wanted to find his own place. And he showed me one day, we were having lunch, and he showed me this ad for a small bachelor apartment. I said, "Well, call it." And he said, "Well, they never take me seriously. I don't have a home address. I don't have a return number, So I said, "Well, give me the phone." So I called, and just said to the landlord, "I'm a local pastor. I'm sitting with this guy. I've known him for a while now, and he's got good character. Could we come see it?" And so the landlord said, "Yeah, sure." We went and saw the place and got it that day. And
wow,
yeah, that was just such a great feeling to be able to help this young guy. And he got his own little apartment. He later got in trouble with the law, and I got a call from the prison to be his surety so that he could be released on bail. Went through the whole court system with him. Developed a team of men, those same team of men from the church. There was 5 guys that we looked in on him every day, made sure he had clothing and food, and got him out to do laundry and go to Walmart and, outings. One guy had him out to his farm every Saturday. Another guy picked him up for church every Sunday. And as long as he was with one of us, he could be out of his house. And so
it sounds like even as a pastor, you already were leading in a way that motivated people to step up. And
I believe it was, and I was learning. I'm telling you, I was learning at the same time. There's lots of frustrations because the way this young man was raised, he didn't really. He may tell you one thing and not be able to fulfill his commitment or whatever. And to me, that was like, what? But so even the frustrations I encountered, I learned all kinds of things about the courts. I understand now the frustration of police officers and lawyers and judges, and wow, our system is really sluggish, and justice is hard to find in the midst of it all. And so it was a great education for me.
You remind me a little bit of a woman that I met about a dozen years ago, 11 or 12 years ago. No, actually a little more than that. She started doing some ministry about 11 years ago. Prior to that, 14 years ago, I met Marie. I was asked to come do a graveside funeral for a woman that had overdosed. And there was just not a supportive family structure around her. So no funeral home. not a whole lot of people that were there, but there was a small gathering at the graveside, and it was this picturesque little roadside cemetery, and I didn't know her, but I knew that she was a person that God loved.
Right.
And so on that basis, I prepared a message and a service, and used it as an opportunity to just learn from her life, and to encourage the people that were gathered. And this woman came up to me afterwards, and it turned out it was this woman and her sister had organized this little graveside funeral. They had handled the arrangements, and there was some connection that they had. So afterwards, there was a lunch back at Marie's house, and so I went to the lunch, and I'm visiting with people I don't know. That's often a pastoral experience, around weddings and funerals. But so Marie says to me, she says, "I'm going to retire in 3 years. And when I retire, I'm going to give you a call because I love the funeral you did." And as I told her about the church that I pastor and the kind of things we were doing, she said, "I want to come and I want to volunteer."
That's awesome.
And I thought, oh, well, I mean, lots of people state good intentions. And so I thanked her and didn't think much of it, though, because we'll see, right? So true to her word, 3 years later, she calls me up. "Hey, remember me?" "Yeah, I do remember." And she says, "Well, I'm retired now." She was an educator in the medical field, and a real sharp lady, and now at retirement age, and Catholic lady. And so she said, "How can I help? What can I do here?" And at that time, we had a bit of a drop-in kind of thing happening in the church. And I said, "Well, rather than creating some kind of job description, I'd like you to come when you can come and just sit and be with the people that are here, and just have conversations with them. And we'll see what this grows into." And so now for 11 years, she's been this incredible advocate for street affiliated people. She doesn't attend our church. She's she's a happy Catholic, but she loves Jesus, and she loves the people, and she will take on. She doesn't say yes to everybody, but she's selective, and she'll take on the hardest cases, and just spend hours with them, going with them to appointments, getting them connected. And one thing she discovered real quickly is that sometimes the people who are struggling on ODSP, people who maybe have mental health issues or different kinds of issues, sometimes they're not the best communicators, and that becomes a real barrier to good service. And so she would spend enough time to really find out what it is that they need, and then walk with them. And in fact, she had a couple times she appeared in court and represented people in court. And she's not a lawyer, but she kind of did a quick study on what she needed to, how do you talk to a judge, and she went in just as a compassionate advocate, and won the case.
Wow.
But she's a straight shooter too. Like, if she's going to represent somebody in court, she'll say, "Listen, you gotta be completely honest with me, because if you're not telling me the truth and you're trying to con me, and I find out I'm done. I won't be helping you. And so she's learned how to communicate effectively and compassionately. And, there's sometimes people think, oh, you gotta, have some kind of degree, some kind of, special certification to be able to go out and make a difference. And to that, I say, well, that may help, but I'll take a person led by the Spirit who's submitted to the Lord in good relationship with others any day,
Right.
and say, go to it. There's, imagine if instead of you being kind of this odd duck in Peterborough, this, ex-pastor that's walking the streets, what if that was just, what if there were just literally dozens of people who said, I'm giving myself to this? What would that look like, eh?
Yeah. Well, that's part of my vision. I mean, that's really what I hope happens next. Like once I'm able to get out there, I want to duplicate that. And that's where I'm hoping to serve the church too, where people that really want to help but don't know how or are afraid, like I was, to be able to come and do the Paul Burke thing, bring them alongside. And already did that yesterday. There was 4 other people. We split up into teams and went and did that. And and eventually you'd ask me what my vision was. I just wanted to mention real quick that the second part of that vision is to actually have a street front location where I could have a team of volunteers that would man that place. You could have computers for online applications. You'd have a physical mail address for them, an email address if they needed. Phone messages could be taken, and then you could have people out walking around, bringing people back to that storefront. Call it the hub, a place of connecting to all over the community. So that's really, that's a bigger part of the vision. It requires more money for leases but it's really, I'm really hoping that we have an army of street level advocates in Peterborough before too long. That's part of the vision.
So yeah, being able to well established relationship that you have with churches is such an important part of urban ministry. Because you become this portal to mission. Right. You become this, if you think of the Himalayas, and if you don't just say, I'm going to go to Mount Everest without any preparation or any guide. You need a guide. You need a Sherpa. Yeah. And our cities need Sherpas. They need people like you that can walk people on safe paths through the city. That's good. Now, your wife, Wendy, she works at Master's College and Seminary in Peterborough. Yep. And we've talked a little bit about, how you'd like to also be a resource to the school and to students, and what kind of things would happen in that context.
Yeah, well, already this year I've been called upon by the school, but Master's College and Seminary, to pastor or Professor Graham Gibson runs the urban ministries course, like world, kind of, usually they go to Toronto. With COVID, they haven't been able to, so they've done it in Peterborough the last couple of years. And so they asked me to come and to lead a small group. So I had 7 students with me, and we walked through the city, and I gave them some of the history, talked about some of the experiences I've had, and we walked down by the river, and it was and we would stop and pray. We prayed over the police station. I'm currently the chaplain of the Peterborough Police, which is awesome too. That's just come about and gives me opportunities. And so it was just kind of a prayer walk, and I got 7 or 8 first year students who are tomorrow's leaders in our movement. It's just so cool. And that's an annual thing, I think. And I'm hoping that I can, be available to the school for, I don't know, maybe other classes or whatever things come up. I'm just hopeful. Graham's a great friend. And Wendy knows everybody there. And so I'm just hoping that, and of course we had lots of students attending Northview Church because it's the closest church geographically to the school. So many of the students in the older grades, they're in the older classes, their 3rd and 4th years have actually sat in the pews at our church. So I don't know what it holds, but I believe that that's kind of part of the future. I mean, served 30 years in this movement and 10 of them right in this town, and got great relationships all through the school. So I'm hoping to be, again, just available to be or do whatever they want me to do to help shape tomorrow's leaders.
You said that you are the chaplain for Peterborough Police. Yeah. So tell me about that. What's a police chaplain do?
Well, I mean, basically, I think there's kind of 2 sides to that. There's the official side, which I think the police chief and the higher ups see. They want a guy that has a dress uniform. I have a dress, a number 1 dress uniform, they call it. And you show up at, special events to say grace and, to give a blessing or whatever. You might be called on for certain events like funerals or celebrations or whatever. And there's a very, this is official status. And I think that's kind of what the leadership sees in what a chaplain is. Now there's great leadership in Peterborough, and Sergeant John Lyons is the staff sergeant there. He's a Catholic guy that he sees the other side of chaplaincy too, which is hanging out with the officers, being present at their social events, riding alongside of them in their cruisers on their shifts. I've done that half a dozen times, getting to know those officers and hearing about their kids and their wives and their situations and laughing together and, responding to calls together. I go right to the door. It's just that's the part that excites me, to be a listening ear. Many of our police are struggling community perception. I being on a call, remember going to the youth shelter and making an official call and getting out of the cruiser, and it was right beside the youth shelter in Peterborough is an older home, and right beside it is like a 6-story high rise. And when the cruiser pulled up and we got out, there had to be at least 8 cell phones over the the balconies pointed at the cops to see what they were going to do and say. And you get that feeling of how these guys are constantly under scrutiny, no matter what they do or say, or they have a lot of stresses. And if I can be just a guy to listen, to care, to be a cheerleader, and a guy maybe eventually, as you build a relationship, that they turn to confide in, that could be a source of encouragement, prayer. Those are my hopes. Again, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I've been a chaplain for 12 years with a motorcycle club called the Blue Knights, which is a law enforcement. Most of them are retired cops, so it takes a long time to earn their trust. But once you got it, they're amazing. Yeah.
Well, it strikes me too that in working with street affiliated population, that the police are often present in their lives, and so does that put you kind of in a bridge position between the police and the people that you're helping? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that, as my relationships on the street progress, and on these ride-alongs, we roll up on people that are, there's noise complaints or open alcohol containers or whatever, and to be able to be the guy that says, hey, I know that guy. Do you want me to talk to him, for you, officer? And, and just kind of warm things up and like to be able to bridge that gap between, even the street affiliated people will often see the police all as being oppressive, and so many of them are not. The majority of them are, incredibly respectful and patient and kind, but to be that go-between between the regulars that they encounter and the police is also one of my hopes. And it just was an incredibly God-ordained, thing that came up again just in the last few months, where a retired sergeant recommended me. He's a good Christian man, and so the opportunities that have dovetailed here are kind of crazy. So again, I think it could be a lot bigger than I even envisioned, those relationships and the possibilities that are there.
I think you're going to be doing this for a while.
Yeah.
And so in the show notes on the website for the podcast, we'll include a link to your Mission Canada page if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to support you financially. There's ways for them to get involved in doing that. And so I don't know if anybody told you this yet today, but Scott, thank you. Thank you for being a presence on the streets of Peterborough, and for stepping in to the difficult places and sometimes the difficult people. And so we pray that that just grows, and that God sends you on assignment with a good company of security angels around you.
Yeah, amen.
And but that doesn't mean that you're going into grave danger. Chances are you're not. When you go with the heart of Jesus, you're stepping in the light. And so thank you, Scott. And I think that's a good point in our conversation to wind it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I know your listeners and viewers are far and wide, and I just appreciate the chance to tell my story. And it's an unfolding, ongoing thing that it's probably going to look completely different next year at this time. So maybe we should rebook.
Hey, you know what? I'd love to do that. And because we're lucky. I mean, sometimes I talk to people that, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years, and you're in your first year officially. Yeah. And so I would love to have you come back and hear some stories of and the interesting thing in this kind of work is that not every story ends well. For the people that we give ourselves to and care about. But then there are the miracles. Then there are the ones that, they're not on fentanyl anymore. Now they're just smoking marijuana.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's growth, and that's change. And Jesus calls us alongside people to witness what he wants to do in their life, to bring them to wholeness, to bring them to salvation and restoration. So, well, we'll catch up to you again real soon. God bless.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
That was Scott Couper. I can't believe that we're already at the end of season 2. We started this podcast on January 1st, 2020. And when we come back with our next episode, we're beginning season 3. My very first guest is going to be Kevin Aaron Wiebe. And Kevin is a pastor that, although he works in a church that is more out in the county in southern Ontario, he's written a book that talks about how to be generous when you're poor. And so we'll introduce his book to you. It'll be in the show notes, and we're going to have a great conversation about how followers of Jesus in the city, but also everywhere, can be generous people, even if you don't have much to give, at least you feel you don't. So this will be an in-depth discussion on the philosophy of poverty and how we need to be thinking as we live in our communities. So come back, will you, on January 1st, 2022, as we begin Season 3. And we're going to have some new theme music. I'm sure you'll enjoy that as well. Until next time, I'm Kevin Rogers, and you've been listening to Sidewalk Skyline Podcast.